and we're continuing with our reading of the book Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, written by Nelson Nash. And this small book is of tremendous value. I hope you can see that in the chapters that we have going through already. So this is part two of chapter four. And in part one, we saw how the government gets involved in things that they shouldn't, and because of that intervention, things go things go wrong. So one of the things that we saw in part one was how the government was creating problems with the money that people were earning and creating taxes, raising taxes, and then they started to give some exceptions as people got upset. And I also read a bunch of books that the title of a bunch of books that Nelson recommends to understand how the government gets involved in what they call emergencies. So we'll continue in a paragraph where we left that it says after World War II, sole proprietors and partners noticed that because of pension plans, corporate employees had a tax advantage over them. So appeal was made to the authorities. We need a tax break too. The result was the creation of KIOC plans, HR10 plans. Initially, participants in this category could contribute $2,500 per year to such a plan. The contribution will be taken of your income for tax purposes this year. It will be tax free until your retirement age, and you're going to be in a lower tax bracket at that time. Of course, when you look at the history of the IRS code and all the changes that have taken place, and you can rest assured there will be changes in the future, none of them to your advantage. The sole proprietors and partners agitated more, and the contribution limit was raised to $7,500 per year. More time passed, and the balance of the population said, in essence, wait a minute. Your authorities have blessed the corporate employees with a tax break. You have uh, blessed the sole proprietors and partners with a tax break. What about us? Give us a tax break too. And so along comes individual retirement accounts. How was the idea sold to Congress? The rationale went something like this: the savings rate among everyday Americans is decreasing, our capital base is eroding. If we will give these folks a tax break, then they will start saving more and we will solve this problem. Of course, the amount of the contribution was limited too. What was the result? The savings rate actually went down naturally. All you have to do to understand this phenomenon is watch this TV commercial in Birmingham, Alabama years ago by Jefferson Federal Savings and Loans. By the way, they don't exist now, along with thousands of other savings and loans organizations. Ron Eason, their public relations man, is sitting in a big easy chair, coffee mug in his hand before the blazing fireplace. He looks you squarely in the eye and asks, how is your retirement plan doing? Mine is fixed. I have an IRA and Jefferson Federal Savings and Loans at Jefferson Federal Red Savings and Loans. Do you know that for as little as $10 per month, you can start an IRA there? Your contribution will be taken off your income tax will be taken off your income for tax purposes this year, and it will be tax free until your retirement time, and you will be in a lower tax bracket at that time. Lots of laugh. What did Joe Sixpack conclude as a result of watching this commercial? He says to himself, whoa, with that plan that good, I don't have to say half as much as I did before. I can take the difference and make a down payment on a boat. And so the savings rate went down. During that era, for for two success, for two successive years, when I got my New York Life annual statement for premiums due, there was another letter from the president of the company explaining how the savings rates had gone down. And so, following this claim of events, pension plans, then KEO plans, and finally IRAs and 401ks, now everyone has an exception to the IRS code. And all these plans are a function of the IRS code. Consider then this reasoning. When government creates a problem, onerous tax action, and then turns around and grants you an exception to the problem they created, any tax qualified plan, aren't you just a little bit suspicious that are being manipulated? All of these plans were introduced as a means of helping citizens out. If they really wanted to help, all they had to do is reduce the taxes. Do you really think they want to do that? The real object is to control your life, and you just stand there unwillingly participate. What in the world has happened to the ability to think? The first 9 pages of the IRS code describe income. The following 1100 pages describe the exceptions to the code. In essence, the code is saying, we own everything, but we will grant you these exceptions. Does this help you to see the hidden agenda that is always there in any government program? The best way for them to accomplish this goal is to make you dependent on them for sustenance. There is a tremendous element of dependence in the act of worship. You will worship that on which you are dependent. They sell these mind crippling ideas through the use of lies. It is all the result of how people think. When people think that their blessings in life come from government, they will always end up in slavery. Along this chain of thought, when I got out of the Air Force in 1954 and went to work in the civilian world, did you know that Social Security did not apply to farmers? It did not apply to doctors, lawyers, and clergymen either. One by one, they succumbed to the siren song of dependence on the government. As of the time of writing this book, students currently graduating from religious seminars can opt out of Social Security. Years ago, when I was in the life insurance business, I convinced 3 young seminary graduates to opt out and simply put what they would have put into Social Security into high premium whole life insurance with a mutual life insurance company. The results would be far better than any alternative. After several years of participating in my recommendations, all three fell by the wayside, victims of the siren song of government dependence. The deciding factor was the introduction of Medicare. When it came into existence, it was tied to Social Security. One could not be covered for Medicare without being covered by Social Security. They just couldn't visualize life without Medicare. The world got along very well without Social Security. Medicare and hundreds of other government programs for years, but the hidden agenda of government methodology combined with the boiled frog syndrome has plunged America into a one way trip to disaster. All empires fail, and so will this one. When Christian leaders, clergymen, pastors, and church leaders don't understand the connection between the act of worship and the concept of dependence, isn't this a time of the impending disaster? They claim to profess they claim to profess worshiping God, but can visualize life without a government program. Back then, without a government program, back them into a corner by suggesting that Social Security, for instance, be terminated and you will see who they really worship. Their behavior tells the truth of the matter. Americans are captives in Egypt, in slavery, and don't know it. Once you take a handout from a government program, it does something to your mind. You can't think straight and you become a slave. That's a great thought from Nelson. I repeat it here. Once you take a handout from a government program, it does something to your mind. You can't think straight and you become a slave. In Figure 6, you are looking at a graphical representation of a 1958 Commissioner's Standard Ordinary Mortality Table, the pattern of which people died at that time. In constructing such tables, actuaries are dealing with a population of 10 million selected lives, people who have been through a screening progress. This is the graph that we're talking about here. Excuse me. They have passed a physical exam and are judged to live until normal life expectancy. And until recently, they were dealing with a theoretical lifespan of 100 years. The graph you see is extracted from that data. Out of the 1,000 born at that time, 10% were projected to die by age 45. Out of the remaining 900, 25% were expected to die by age 65. 75% were expected to die after 65. So it is evident that most of the deaths occur after age 65. Let's take time out here and examine where this weird idea of age 65 came from. The idea of retirement is a relatively recent concept. Nowhere in history is the word even mentioned to any degree. I have studied the Bible through and through for many years and I can't find it anywhere. So Moses retired and lived happily thereafter. Basically, the idea started in Germany about 1890 with Bismarck. These were the folks that gave the world the idea of retirement and government sponsored Social Security. Bismarck set retirement age for German males at 70. In 1916, it was reduced to age 65. In 1890, life expectancy for Germans was about 45. So you see, it was probably that the average person would never collect anything. Anyway, this is where Roosevelt FDR got age 65 for a Social Security in 1937. At that time, life expectancy for American males was about 61 years. Now it is about 78. And we have most people talking about retiring at age 65 or even less. Forget it. It can happen. I have read predictions of living to age 120 are possible due to increasing technology. Life insurance companies now have policy plans of life paid up 121 years in view of this possibility. But yet, there are people who hope to retire early, say age 55 or so. I am going to work for 30 years and retire for 50 years. Get real, it can work. A major change in the way people think is overdue. I have read studies where it will take 80% of my grandchildren's income to supply Social Security income to their parents' generation. There is no way that can happen. It is impossible to do. It can't work. Furthermore, I drew up the following scenario over 30 years ago, and no one had the courage to repeat it. Three men were born in the US on the same day. One was Cauca- Caucasian, one was Hispanic, and the third was black. They all had similar jobs during their working life and hence paid maximum into the Social Security scheme. They all achieved retirement age and drew their first Social Security check. But 1 month later, the black man died. It is a statistical fact that blacks don't live as long as Hispanics and Caucasians. And those Japanese folks live even longer. You can pass all the laws you want to, and you can pass all the laws you want to, and you can't change that fact. The next month, the black man's widow died. How many times have you heard reports of one spouse dying and the surviving spouse died shortly thereafter? I read an extensive study recently about the effects of loneliness on longevity. It is real. What happened to all the money the black man paid into Social Security all of his working life? The fact, if it doesn't exist, that money has already been spent by the US government, and worthless IOUs are put into a file in a cave in West Virginia. There is no money in Social Security Trust Fund. The fallacious theory is that the program will continue by confiscations from future generations. The following month, the Hispanic man dies, and the month after that, his widow dies. What happened to all the money he put into Social Security? Same thing. It doesn't exist. Lies don't last forever. One way or another, truth will emerge. The net result of the foregoing is that the money the black man and the Hispanic man paid into Social Security goes to sustain the Ponzi scheme for a few more years for the benefit of the white man's widow, because they outlive the white man. Please tell me how long that scheme will last when everyone catches into this fact. This is totally unfair and is a sterling example of the law of unintended consequences that is the hallmark of every government plan. They will never work because they are all manifestations of men trying to play God in the pagan sense of the word. God is a jealous God. He won't put up with such nonsense. Will you citizens ever learn? This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but men love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. John 3:19. Well, this is part 2 of chapter 4. So, thanks for taking a look at it. As you can see, it's interesting reading. If you drive, if you commute long, maybe you can use these videos and listen to them so you will learn a little bit. Now, if you're interested on setting up your dividend paying whole life insurance contract, you can contact me at jorgeeherrera.com. I will answer your questions. I will teach you all I know about infinite banking, and I will set up your policy because I have been trained to do that. I learned the infinite banking in 2006. We're in 2024. So that's 18 years that I have spent learning about this. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.